Good morning. Asia Riazantceva is my name, and I'm working as a coordinator for EU recruitment at the Swedish Council for Higher Education, or Universitets- och högskolerådet. And today we're going to talk about Blue Book Traineeship with two of my colleagues. Justyna Legutko is project agent at DG Youth at the European Commission. So she's going to tell us all the inside information and best advice and tips about the application process, how to write a good application. And then I have my future colleague with us too, Natalie Imani, that is going to work at the Swedish Permanent Representation in Brussels from 1st of September as also coordinator for EU recruitment. But Natalie also has an experience as Blue Book trainee, so she's going to share her experience with you. So I leave my word to you, Justyna. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Asia, for the invitation. And good to not see you all, but be with you all here today. Hi, Natalie again. My name is Justyna Legutko. I am just going to try to share my screen and see if this works. I have a few slides prepared. 1 second. There you go. I hope you can all see. I'm going to tap this in the corner. I'm here to talk to you about the Blue Book Traineeship today. And I was a trainee myself in October 18, but as Asia has said, I have been working in the Education and Culture Directorate of the European Commission for the last year, and exactly in the traineeships office. So I was managing or co-managing that program. And yeah, now in August, I will start a PhD in Sweden. So today I am here with you as in the capacity of an EU careers ambassador who has had some insider knowledge, let's say, into the Commission. And before I start talking about the selection process and how to write an amazing application, we would all like to know who is actually out there, who is with us today. So we would like to ask you to go to menti.com and type in the 423533 code, because we have prepared 2 questions for you. We would like to know what kind of academic or professional background you have. So are you a bachelor student, a master student, or a PhD student at the moment? Or are you already working either in the public or private sector or the third sector in a non-profit or a charity? Just so we have an idea of who our audience is today. Great, we already have 5 participants. So it's mostly master students, I can see. Okay, so 3/4 are students, and then we have 1/4 working either in the public or private sector. Fantastic. Okay, great, good to know. Seems like a varied group out there. And then we'll jump straight to the second question. What is your specialization or your field of interest? Do you have an international relations background, or economics, translation, communication, IT? What is your field of interest? What is your background, academic background? We have a doctor, fantastic. International security, law. If you could just type in a few keywords, they will pop into this word cloud. Communication, art history, fantastic. Very varied. European studies, law, finance, international relations, European studies, fantastic. EU research as well. Development. Wow, many, many backgrounds. Okay, great. So that is very, very helpful to know. I will get back to this when I talk about the application and how to actually make your profile stand out. So it's great. Let's go back to the presentation then. 1 second. There you go. Okay, so first I will give you a little bit of general information about the program. The program is 60 years old this year. It started in 1960 with only 3 trainees in the beginning, And currently we are recruiting 900 trainees per session, and the sessions run twice a year, which adds up to that wonderful number of 1,800 per year. And it is actually the world's biggest program by number of applications and places offered. So you will really be part of a huge traineeship community if you get accepted. The program is 5 months long. So it either starts in March or October every year. And it can take place basically anywhere in Europe. So most placements are obviously in Brussels, so 85 to 90% will be in the heart of Europe, as it's called. But there are also 50 places, around 50 places in Luxembourg, and there are also agencies and offices in Copenhagen, Grange, Warsaw is a newcomer to the program, Frontex, the border agency, is over there. So they have around 30 placements. And the yellow ones are examples of some representations of the European Commission in the member states. So every capital city and many big cities of the member states will have offices as well directly there. So if you are interested in working outside of Brussels, that is definitely an option. So any door is open to you in this respect. And yeah, the European Commission is a huge, large international organization. So you will be part of an amazing community where you will be able to put in or put your expertise into practice. So the field that you will most likely be working in the field that you have just put into the work cloud. And the EU is running this program because you, as newcomers to the institutions, bring very fresh new perspectives. And it also creates a pool of graduates and of enthusiasts, let's say, outside of the Commission that the Commission can then work with. So it is kind of a win-win situation for you and the institution as well. So I'll jump straight into how to become part of this program. You are eligible if you complete these 3 conditions. First, you have to have completed what we call a first cycle of higher education. So in practice, this means if you have a bachelor degree, you can apply. You have to have it by the application deadline though. So if you, for example, now the application deadline will be at the end of August, most likely. So if you only graduate or have your diploma only in October, you will unfortunately not be able to apply yet. You have to hold your diploma by the application deadline. The second criterion is you most likely all fit it already because you're listening to me in English and you are probably fluent in Swedish as well. So you already have 2 EU official languages, but the more the merrier. And since the program is intended for newcomers, we ask of all candidates to not have any prior kind of employment or experience within the institutions that lasted for more than 6 weeks, because we really want fresh perspectives and people who can bring something completely new to the institution. But the program is open, in contrast to any other European competition, to graduates from all around the world. So no matter what your nationality is, you can apply, and there is no age limit. So you can apply at any stage, whether you have just graduated or whether you're 20 years into your career, the traineeship is open for you. This is the fun part, the selection process. It is quite lengthy. It lasts 9 months, more or less. So if you apply now by the end of August, you will start only in March 2021. And that is, the reason is that the process is still quite manual. So when you apply, your application will first be put through an automatic filter to check for eligibility. So for example, if you only put 1 language, you will be out automatically because we require all candidates to have at least 2 EU languages. And then every single application will be evaluated twice by 2 independent Commission staff who don't know about each other. And that evaluation is crucial because for every single little thing that you put into your application, you will get points. And the more points you have, the higher your chances are, of course, of getting in. So I will get back to that point system in the next slide. If you have a certain amount of point and you pass a threshold, we apply national quotas. So the threshold changes from session to session, depending on how strong the candidates are. And your nationality is also important because we would like to have all nationalities represented fairly. that quota depends on the population of a country, but also on the number of candidates that we have for that session. So there's some magic formulas that are working and making sure that the process is fair and everybody has, or every nationality is represented. And if you pass that quota, you will be asked to submit supporting documents. So every single little thing that you put into the application and that has been evaluated at this stage, you now have to prove with a relevant piece of paper. And all that is evaluated again twice. And if both evaluators say yes, what you have put in the application is true, your profile will appear in the so-called virtual Blue Book, which means it's basically a platform, and every unit in all DGs or in all agencies or services will now have access to your profile and can browse through and choose their candidates. And they will choose you according to their needs, according to how they like your profile, and in the end you will get a placement offer sent to you before you start the traineeship. How do you then make your application stand out? Because this is a lengthy process and there's a lot of evaluation involved. So these are the categories that you have to provide us information on. First, your education. That is a very, very important part. So the more detail you put in there, the better. We also ask about your language skills, work experience, but only the relevant ones. So if you have been waitressing at some point in your life that is unfortunately not relevant for commission work, put in all the work experience that you think might be interesting for the European Commission or all the units that we have. If you have any kind of international experience, put it in there. That will gain you a lot more points again. Motivation, very important, small part of the application, but quite crucial. And any other skills that you might have, you can put them in your application as well. So any IT skills, any publications that you have, write it all in. And in order to make your application stand out, I have kind of come up with 3, let's say, guiding rules that you can think of when you write your application. I hope they will be useful. I have to keep moving the little, there you go. So the more detail you put in your application, the more points you will automatically have. That is the golden rule number 1. So really type it all into the system. I will get back to this in a second. The second rule is prove it all. You have to have a piece of paper, a certificate, a letter from your employer to prove everything that you put into your application. And thirdly, as part of your application, you will also have to make a few choices that I will show you in the next slides. So going back to rule number 1, more detail, more points. If you think about your education, put in your grades. Just for having a bachelor degree, you will have a certain amount of points. For having a good bachelor degree, you get more points. For having a very good one, even more points. So your grade really does count. It is just one line where you put in your grade, and it will make a difference and put you closer to pass the threshold. As to your work experience, do type in all the tasks that you have done. Your task description will make a difference because the evaluators read and see how relevant it is to what the Commission is doing. So if what you put is relevant, it will make you stand out again and gain you more points. As to your language skills, the more languages you speak, the better, obviously. You will get more points for every language that you have above or at a B level or above. So you have to have your mother tongue, let's say, a working language of the EU, which is either English, French, or German, and any level, any language that is at a B level or higher will gain you more points again. And your motivation, be specific. Show us what you can offer to the Commission besides just a general interest in how the Commission works in your field. So we have a lot of applications where they say, yes, I work in global health, and I would like to see how the European Commission works in this field. Everybody wants to see this. What can you offer? What specific experience do you have that you can then apply in the European Commission? So make your experience really count. Say specifically what you have done. And the evaluators will see you know what you're talking about, and the unit will see that you have experience in the field, and you can then learn during the traineeship how the Commission does it. So show us what else you have besides an interest. And I think that will bring you a lot more points as well. The second rule, prove it all. Everything you put in your application, every language, every diploma, every grade, you have to have a piece of paper for it. Because in the second round, if something is missing, you will unfortunately be out automatically. So really make sure that you have the paperwork, even by the time of the application, because you will only have 1 week to upload your supporting documents. So if you still need a piece of paper, the time might be tight. And as to your language, you don't have to necessarily have a language certificate or a test that you have passed. University courses will count. So if you can't prove your English level with an IELTS or a Cambridge certificate, don't worry, because if you have had courses at university taught in English, that is proof as well. So just make sure you have the paperwork. And the third rule is choose well. So this is a scary list of acronyms, but don't be scared. It's a list of all the DGs, all the directorates where the Commission works, and the agencies and services where the traineeship program that are participating in the traineeship program. So for example, Agri deals with agriculture, Budge is budget, Klima is climate, as you can envy environment. We have MARA that deal with maritime affairs. So all of these acronyms stand for something. And as part of your application, you will have to choose 3 of them that you would like to work in, your top 3 choices, let's say. And that choice is very important because, for example, if you put employment as your number 1 and MARA as your number 2, and both of those DGs want you, you will not be asked to choose. You have already chosen as part of the application. So you will automatically be assigned to DG employment because that was your number 1. So really think which DGs you would like to work in mostly, or most heartily. Then there are a few other choices that you can make already as part of the application. If you have a preference for location, put it in your motivation part of the application. If you would like to work in Madrid, already say it, because very, very few applicants are aware that you can do your traineeship outside of Brussels and are quite surprised when they are offered something outside of the city. So if you do have a preference, put it in your application, and the DGs or the units, they do filter through some keywords. So if they see that you are already aware of placements outside of Brussels, it will give you extra points. And the next point is something, think outside the box. So what I mean by that is to see where you can apply your skill set besides the obvious choice. So I saw we have some lawyers in the back, in the audience. Don't put, or in my opinion, I would suggest not to put the judicial service as your first choice, because most applications by lawyers or people with a law background will be to the judicial service. So they will have a lot of choice. But there's a judicial unit in most other directorates as well, because lawyers are needed everywhere. So if you have a special interest in education and have a law background, do put DG EAC as your first choice. And in your application, it will be clear that you have studied law. And this is crucial because DGs or units filter by the top 3 choices that you make. So who has put my DG as their first choice? And then they look through the profiles. So if you have put DG education there and they see you as the only lawyer who applied to DG EAC, your chances are a lot higher than standing out from all the lawyers that have applied for the judicial service. And that applies to communications as well. I think there was a profile in communications. There's a communications unit in most DGs. So do choose a specific topic and then your profile will stand out for that DG. There is, in order to know where all those units are, you can just Google who is who, European Commission. So this is the little corner here. And the list of units, all the directorates and all the units and all the people who work there are listed. So you will be able to see which DG has a communication unit, which DG has a judicial unit, or any other interest that you might have. And try not to go for the obvious choice in your application. Yeah, and one last word from me of encouragement to apply. As you are most likely Swedish, you have very high chances of getting in because Sweden is quite underrepresented in the program. As you can see by the number of applications here, Italians are very much overrepresented, and Sweden is quite in the middle. So your application, if you really make it stand out, if you make the effort of typing in every single little thing into that platform that we have, your application will stand out. So yeah, this will be it for now from my side. I'm happy to answer any questions after Natalie. I'm not sure if I'm over time or not. I haven't kept track. But yeah, just be aware that we also have a website where you can find any more information about the program and FAQs. Thank you for listening. And yeah, see you later, I guess.
Thank you, Justyna. I just want to ask, I guess maybe that was something that we should have started with before we go on to more practical Blue Book experience. The big question is, when would the application open? Because we expected it to be open on July 16th, but then suddenly the Commission changed the information and now application dates should be confirmed. Is there any word on when we should expect opening of the application?
I think it will be still in July. Unfortunately, I don't work there for 3 weeks. 3 weeks ago, it was still the 16th of July. And now I'm unfortunately no longer in the loop. So I can't tell you an exact date, but I'm pretty sure it has something to do with Corona. And it will definitely open and hopefully still this month, I guess. Okay. So that you still have a whole month until the end of August to fill in your application.
Well, let's stay tuned and keep on checking the website.
Exactly.
Okay, Natalie, can you tell us a little bit more about your experience as Blue Book trainee and any advice and recommendations of how to succeed not only with the application, but very many questions that we get after people get information that they are Blue Book trainees. What do I do next? Do I take contact with the DG that I put on my priority list? How does it work afterwards?
Hello everyone, and thank you for to the panelists for having me. So I was also a trainee in the cycle of from October 2018, and I had just finished my master's. So for me it was quite a lot to sort out all at once, because I was moving to Brussels the same day that my traineeship was beginning. I would not recommend that. If you can have some leeway, make sure you have that. Yeah, it was a fantastic presentation by Justyna. Thank you so much. For me, it was very interesting to sort of see the process again, because it brings back the flashbacks of getting the emails of the deadlines and then having to wait a couple of months to hear about the next part of the cycle. And a little bit, first and foremost, about me. I was born in Iran and raised in Sweden. I studied law in the UK, and I've also worked abroad at different firms, but also at international organizations. I always sort of knew I wanted to go to international organizations, so I made sure to sort of tailor my education towards that, partly by studying abroad, away from my home country, but also by doing as many exchanges as I could. So I did summer exchanges in Brazil and India and China, and I did Erasmus in Germany, and I did a summer course in Croatia. Obviously, you don't need to have done all of that to get a traineeship at the EU, but any international experience, like Justyna said, absolutely counts. Especially, I think the Commission loves if you've done Erasmus. So if you have done an Erasmus exchange throughout your degree, that's definitely bonus points, because it shows that you're sort of familiar a little bit with sort of the EU in terms of education, and you also have used one of their programs. And obviously there is a million benefits with doing an exchange like that. And so it shows that you have this interest to be in an international setting and learning a new language and experience a new culture. So I would 100%, if you're still going through your bachelor's or in your master's, you have exchange possibilities, 100% use Erasmus or other exchanges offered. It did me a lot of good, and I think it really made me stand out. And also, like Justyna said, make sure you have a certificate for everything, especially with some of you who are Swedish, you know, sometimes these things can take a while to get. Make sure I sort of have a folder in my computer where I have scanned every single certificate document, everything. I have it ready for any single like job or internship or anything I apply for, so that I have proof, so I don't have to wait for letters or certificates. So make a sort of a folder like that for everything. So for me, I applied, and I had heard of it, and other people in my master's had applied for the traineeship. I was the only person from my sort of master's to get accepted. I had another friend who was accepted to the European Parliament traineeship, the Schumann traineeship. So you also look at the other institutions. So although the Commission one is the largest, the other institutions also offer them, and sometimes they have a sort of not as strict deadline, or their deadline's a bit later. So if you miss this one, there is another chance. So it is interesting because it takes a long time to deal with this process, but I also think the payoff is very good, because if you're going to do one internship or one traineeship in your life, I would say this is probably the best one. First and foremost, because it's paid. That is not the case, for example, with the UN, that I know people who have experience with. And so also in terms of this sort of support they offer you, it's not this typical, you know, can you bring us coffee, can you go and make a copy of this file kind of traineeship. It's very much that from day one, you meet the boss, the head of the unit or the deputy head of unit, and that person is going to be your person throughout the traineeship. And from most experiences, you do end up forming a good relationship with this person. They're interested in what you're interested in. They see themselves responsible for your education and your training. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity that you normally don't get in a job where the boss is incredibly interested in you and your entire development throughout your duration there. So they definitely like try to make sure that your tasks are oriented towards your interests. So that's something to really appreciate and take advantage of, because it's a great way to sort of get an idea of the EU, because you do get a lot of opportunities to go to Parliament, for example, or other places. If you see an interesting meeting that is happening and you want to participate, usually they're quite flexible. They say it's fine, you can go, and because you're mainly there to sort of obviously like do the work, but also get a very good idea of the EU and the institutions, and for them to spark an interest in you to continue working there. And obviously, as Justyna stayed there and continued working there, that is the case for a lot of people. Not everyone, of course, but for a lot of people. So it's a great way to get a foot into the door, make some great contacts, and stay, because it can prove to be quite challenging to get a foot into EU if you have zero experience with the EU. So 100% helps, I would say. For my part, I applied to DG Justice. I also applied for 2 other DGs, and I got accepted by DG Justice. So for me, I had asked a friend of mine who had done the traineeship before me, and I asked her for advice, and she said what Justyna said to you, that, you know, make sure you prove everything. Don't claim you know something, or maybe you do know it, but you don't have papers to prove it. Don't put it in, because you don't want to sort of make it through the first round and then you have to prove everything, and then for them to say, sorry, like you're out because of this. So that's incredibly important. So I was because I have a legal background, I was very interested in law, of course, but I also did international law and international relations. So I ended up in the international relations unit of DG Justice. So that was very perfect for me. So I got an idea of how the EU works with other sort of with prospective countries that want to join the EU and they're still in the negotiation period, and also how they work between in the interinstitutional aspects. So for me, that was incredibly interesting. And one thing I did that I definitely encourage you to do if you are to be selected is to apply for the reverse mentorship program. So that's a program that also proves how much the EU kind of is trying to make sure that they show you that you sort of have an important role there to play. So it's a program where you become the mentor as a trainee of someone who is the head of unit. So for me, I got to be the mentor of a head of directorate at Olaf, so the anti-fraud office. So that was probably one of the biggest highlights of my entire traineeship, because she became such a great role model for me. And we were and just like with the traineeship application, make sure in your application for the reverse mentorship program that you really are as specific as you can be and really show that you're very interested in this in different ways and what you can offer and what you hope to gain. That obviously is always a good rule of thumb for everything. And so she and I would meet once a week and we would talk about the work that she does, her experiences, because she had worked there for decades for the EU. So she could tell me about, what it was like to be a young female lawyer coming to the EU and sort of how she rise up the ranks and is now this, big boss. And it was it was so fulfilling for me to sort of have this blueprint of someone who has done it before me, and sort of has a similar background to me in terms of education and gender, and can tell me how that looked like. So for me, that was incredibly rewarding, and I learned a lot, and I hope I was able to also teach. So it was a great exchange, and she put me in touch with a lot of other people. So I definitely think that was one of the greatest highlights of my traineeship. So there are a lot of these different kind of opportunities. There's also a lot of these little societies when you're a trainee where you can do sort of social things with other trainees, but it can also be a little bit more educational. And in terms of social, we are, as Justyna knows, you never lack any social life when you are a trainee. They very much know at the EU that you're also here to sort of bond with other people and have this kind of experience. So there is definitely possibilities to make a lot of friends, and we even have something called Plux at Thursdays, which is short for Place de Luxembourg, which is the square right in front of the Parliament, where everybody sort of hangs out on Thursday nights, and you can grab a drink or something else, and kind of, if it's sunny, you have a big picnic and all the trainees gather there, and it's a great opportunity to meet a lot of people. I would say you probably make more friends during your 5 months traineeship than you did throughout your entire degree at university, because you have a lot of like-minded people who are all interested in the same institution. They're all interested in this sort of international career. They all want to work for like the EU or another international organization. So for me, it was incredibly rewarding. And so I would say the social aspect is also definitely one of the highlights. And that can also prove to be a way to get into the EU, because this person that you might be sharing a drink with, on a Thursday night may be, you know, someone very important in EU a few years from now. So it's a great place to form connections as well. So I would definitely take advantage of that as much as you can. And just, yeah, be a social butterfly. You don't have to, but it definitely are a million opportunities to be. So there's a lot of excursions as well in the weekends where you can go to surrounding cities of Belgium. And yeah, to Paris, to Amsterdam, there's so much being organized. So it's kind of like, if you've done Erasmus, this is kind of an extension to it, but more from the professional aspect, of course. So yeah, it's definitely to recommend. And yeah, so in terms of, yeah, I would say this is probably the most rewarding thing I've done, of the things in my CV, because it sort of led to the next thing. And it weighs a lot. Sort of everybody knows what being a Blue Book is, or being a trainee is. It's such a known in like traineeship program, and that's so important because it just carries a lot of weight in the name, and most people will know that if you have been a trainee, you have been through this entire process. So they know that you have to show all of your documents, all of your everything. So you're sort of validated by EU. So that in itself, like if you don't want to stay in EU, or you want to, you sort of, it carries a lot of weight itself that you've done this traineeship, I would say.
Natalie, if I may ask a question about, I know that several of our participants today, they have just recently received a letter of confirmation that they are trainees. What do you do when you get this letter? Do you get in touch? Do you lobby yourself, or do you just sit and wait to be offered a place? What did you do when you got this happy letter that you are now on in this Blue Book database?
Yes, so I found out that I was pre-selected for the Blue Book Traineeship, which pretty much means that you are not yet guaranteed a position, but you have made it to the final round, where the only thing left is for one of the agencies or the DGs to pick you. It means your chances are very, very good, but you should still maybe like do your best to try to get a spot, because it's still not guaranteed. So for me, I was living in New York at the time when I received my email. And so by the time I read it, it was already hours had passed because of the time difference. And I was on my way to go to my internship. So I did not lobby. I kind of didn't really understand the lobbying. I didn't really know how to do it. There was a list of emails I received where they said you can contact these people if you want to sort of contact them, talk to them. And I didn't really understand, because I'd never had to lobby for anything before. So I didn't really understand. So I kind of just thought, oh, it will be fine. And then I found out later on that, some people will have already have their email typed up, and they're waiting for this email at midnight to start sending, bombarding these poor people at EU with emails where they're saying, please pick me, here's my CV, like I love your units, I want to work there forever. And I didn't know this at all. So in retrospect, I think if I had done that, maybe I would have, I don't know, had a much greater chance of getting in. I would have maybe had more offers from different units. I was lucky enough to sort of receive an offer, even though I didn't lobby. And I know other people who didn't lobby and still got an offer. But I do 100% think that it helps, because it shows that you're very keen, and who doesn't love that, They want someone who is eager to do the work. So if you don't have the sort of time difference issues that I had, I would definitely suggest that you do it. And if you have received this offer, congratulations. And I would say once you sort of lobbied, in terms of the sort of practical aspect left to do, which I think a lot of Swedes especially dread, is to have to find accommodation, because we have such a bad experience in Sweden with finding accommodation that we assume that it's a nightmare everywhere in the world. But fortunately, that is not the case, especially in Brussels, where you can actually find very affordable accommodation, and there is more homes than there are people, so you will not struggle and you don't have to stand in any of the sort of property queues as we have in Sweden in order to secure a room. And in regards to that, Facebook is your best friend. There is a million groups for people looking for flatmates, roommates, people to take over their flats, and so on. And so I would say, if you're Swedish and this is your biggest worry, you do not need to despair, because that is the easiest part of the traineeship, I would say. Oh, I can't hear you.
Yes, thank you. Shall we start maybe taking in some questions and continue discussion? And I have a few questions that I have received even prior via emails too. And maybe if we go back to the application process, I have a few. First of all, is it true that some people say that Swedish applicants are prioritized? So there is some common rumor going on that you don't have to put too much effort into writing a motivation because your nationality is going to give you a priority. What do you say about that, Justyna?
That's the first time I'm hearing this rumor. But I don't think that your nationality will give you any kind of perks. It will put you at an advantage, let's say, at the threshold and the national quota level. Because if you have enough points in your application, so you pass that threshold, and then the national quota is applied, like I said, Swedish applicants are quite underrepresented, so there your chances are higher of getting selected in comparison to Italians, for example. But as soon as it comes to the units, or your units selecting you, nobody really looks at the nationality anymore. The Commission, it's very rare that you still think in national terms. There are some units who might really require, for example, a Swedish speaker or a speaker of a certain language. In translation, that might be a big issue. But any kind of other work, the nationality is really not a criterion anymore. At the cabinets, maybe. So if you are interested in working in a cabinet, so this is the political representation of the Commission, their nationality still applies, so that the Swedish commissioner will, for example, probably choose a Swedish applicant. But any kind of DG, as soon as you want to work in justice or in climate or any other topic, nationality is no longer an issue. That is where your profile counts, and the lobbying.
So the application should be perfect, no matter
Yes.
what nationality. And then there is a question, is it possible to put in 2 nationalities in the application?
I don't think so, because that would kind of put in question the whole nationality system. So you choose the nationality that you would like to be in at the Commission, but it doesn't prevent you from putting in the languages that you speak. So this is even something I would recommend, is if you have 2 mother tongues, put only one as your mother tongue, and the second one as a sort of foreign language or other language, as long as you can prove it. So if you are Swedish and Polish, for example, you apply as a Polish person, and then you can put your Swedish university certificate as proof of your Swedish language level. And like this, you automatically get more points for language. Whereas if you put Polish and Swedish as your mother tongues, you don't get any points for your mother tongue.
Yeah, that's a very popular question about language certificates, and if you have several mother tongues, so mother tongue you do not get any extra points for. And then there is another question about language that you already mentioned in some way, about how do you certify your language skills. And for instance, if you were raised in a bilingual family, it's not very easy to certify all the languages that you can speak. So as I understand, if there is no proof, then is it even recommended to mention that you speak, let's say, Russian, but there is nothing that you can actually prove?
If you don't have proof of your language, you will have to put it as your mother tongue, because we don't require proof for your mother tongue. But if you want to get points for all your languages, then you will have to prove it. So you can play with it a little bit. Even if, for example, English, if you have English and Swedish, you can and you can't prove your English level, but you can prove your Swedish level by your university certificate. You could just put English as your mother tongue and then Swedish as a foreign language, and then put your university certificate in Swedish as proof. And that will qualify you already. So you can play around a little bit, but if you don't have proof, unfortunately, it doesn't count. You won't have to prove your language if it's at an A level. So if you have very basic knowledge, feel free to put it there, because sometimes it might help, but you won't have to prove it. But as soon as it's a B level, you will need a certificate or any kind of proof, or a university degree, or a bilingual secondary education. So if you have gone to a bilingual school before university, that counts as proof as well.
What about certificate from this Swedish gymnasia level or high school level? Would it count as a certificate, or does it have to be on a higher education level?
If your education was in another language as Swedish, so for example, if you have gone to a bilingual school, then yes. But if English has just been one subject among many others, that is no longer counted as proof.
Okay, thank you. Then another, speaking of languages, do all the certificates, for example, work experience, have to be written in English?
No, they don't, because the evaluators, one of them at least, will be the native speaker of your language, for example. So it is a Swedish person will definitely see your application, and they will be able to understand that language. So as long as it's an EU official language, you don't have to translate it into English. Any other third language, yes.
Okay. Then there was a question that I got by mail about publications, because I know that very many Swedish applicants, since their bachelor degree or bachelor thesis or master thesis is being published, they consider it as publication. Can you specify what kind of publication would give you extra points?
Any publication, I think.
So even if your thesis is published, then you get it. Okay.
You can put that into your application, because that is not obvious in Europe, let's say, that your bachelor thesis is published. So that is actually something that will get, if that is true, that is usually published if you're a Swedish person, great, that puts you at an advantage.
Okay. And then I guess you already answered this question. Will 2 nationalities give you extra credits in case both of them are EU nationalities? But since you can't really put 2 nationalities in the application, that wouldn't be relevant. Next question, maybe even you, Natalie, can say, what would you say are the biggest differences between doing Blue Book Traineeship compared to a traineeship at the other EU institution? Or maybe non-EU?
Yes, because it's you're not allowed to do you can't do traineeships at different institutions. So if you've done the Commission one, you can't then apply for the European Parliament one. So you have to pick. And it's difficult for me and Justyna to say, because we both picked the Commission, so we can't really speak for the experience of doing it at the Parliament, for example, or somewhere else. From what I have heard from those who have done it at Parliament, for example, that I think is also an institution everyone is very interested in, I think we were all a bit jealous of them, because they get, I think, Fridays off, and they finish slightly earlier than us, and they get slightly more paid than us. So, I mean, very nominal, small amount, but still. So I think all of us, all the trainees at Commission, we were not very impressed with Parliament. So I would say still that if policy making and sort of, if you enjoy the sort of nitty gritty behind the scenes, dealing with the policy making, legislative aspects of it, or just seeing how this incredible machinery works, I would say Commission is the right fit for you. I think Parliament might seem a bit more glamorous, but I would also say that most of the work is done at Commission. So everything that comes out of Parliament sort of has been been work through at Commission. So it's an interesting place to be, but if Parliament is something you're more interested in, you can apply for that, or Council or other agencies and so on. In terms of other international organizations, I have done an internship in New York where I worked very closely with the UN headquarter, and that was a great way to sort of get a foot into the door and get an insight of how that international institution works. And I have also done a traineeship at the Council of Europe, which is a separate international organization from the EU, which hopefully you know, that is based in Strasbourg. So to compare, I would still say that my best experience was from the European Commission, because it's such a well-established program, and they really picked you, cherry-picked you with care. So they are interested in sort of training you and ensuring that you get a good experience. And because it's so well established, you so easily so many things have already been put into place, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel or figure out how to meet other people. All of these things are already established. So I would say that's very, very nice. And obviously compared to my experience in New York where I was unpaid, it's a huge benefit to be able to afford to do it, because it creates an opportunity for everyone to apply, and not just people who have rich parents or a trust fund or something like that to be able to do an unpaid traineeship or internship. And the work is also reflected in it. When they do pay you, they tend to give you real work, because then they want to get some work out of you. And when it's unpaid, it tends to not be as substantial. So I would say that you may have to start with unpaid internships in order to then get an internship, for example, or traineeship at the EU. Definitely not a requirement, but I do think it helps for my profile. But it definitely helps to be at an institution that, of course, if you are a European citizen, what's happening at EU affects you much more than what's happening at UN, for example. And it's just so much more tangible that this little thing you're working on is going to affect all of these people in your continent, and beyond, of course. And for me, it was very much more intriguing to sort of see that. And yeah, so I would recommend it. And I would say it differs a bit, and for me, it was the preferable one.
Okay, thank you. Then we have another question. I'm accepted into the Blue Book for the October session, and I have sent lobbying letter to each of the DGs I have applied for. Should I continue to send more emails, as Natalie said, or should I bomb them with lobbying? And maybe like an add-on question, because some ask, should I use this who is who in EU and try to find people to contact outside this contact list that I get with the letter of confirmation? What would you both recommend? Can you start, Justyna?
Sure.
Yeah.
So bombarding the EU with emails is definitely fine. You won't necessarily get an answer from them, because there are just so many people who do it. But it will they might write down your name, and they might.
Can it hurt?
It can't hurt.
Okay.
No. Exactly. So even if you're just one of 10 emails, it can't hurt, because they will see your name twice. They see it in the email, and they might see it in the virtual Blue Book. So it really can't damage your reputation or anything. And as to writing to people outside, it's unconventional, and I think it might help. Even when I was working at the Commission, I got, because my unit was quite big. We were in we had the traineeships office in there, the Discover EU program, in case where 18-year-olds can travel with an Interrail pass. We had Erasmus and the European Solidarity Corps, which is basically volunteer work. So there were a lot of programs within one unit, and I got emails from people saying, I would love to work on the Discover EU program. And even though I wasn't working on it, I was able to then forward that email to the person either who's working on that program, or I knew the person who was actually selecting the trainee in our unit. So I was able to forward that email to that specific person. So it really it can only help you. the worst thing that can happen is your email gets ignored. But even if you don't hear from the person that you write, it is more likely that you will get a phone call from the person who's actually selecting the trainee in the unit.
Okay, thank you. Natalie, what would you recommend about lobbying?
I mean, you have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. So email, and if you're very keen, LinkedIn is your best friend, because a lot of these people who are heads of units or in obviously already working in the institutions, they have LinkedIn. You can go in there and be like, oh, we went to the same university, maybe I can mention them my email. Well, you know, we're both alumni of this university, or you know, then you can, I mean, I know it borders a little bit on stalkering, but I think, you know, for example, in my specific case, I know because my boss told me that, oh, I saw that you also went to Edinburgh University, and I did as well. And that's one of the reasons why, like, when there was another candidate and you, and I had to pick between you, like, that was the thing that maybe like pushed your, you know, towards getting it. So I do think these things help. I would definitely like recommend it. So set aside some time to do this.
I can even say that I have met several people that have been pre-selected to Blue Book 3-4 times, and they did nothing. So it's better to be active and maybe a little annoying with your mails, but then at least you have a better chance to show that you are interested and have higher chances to be selected and seen among all other candidates in the Blue Book. Next question, can the motivation and all the supporting documentation be in any official EU language that is Swedish, or there is any benefit in writing everything in English? And I don't really know what, if motivation in this lobbying letters or in application is in English. It's only in Swedish if you apply for translation traineeship, or am I wrong?
No, that's correct. So your application has to be in one of the official EU working languages, which is either English, French, or German. So you can choose from those three. The translation traineeship is slightly different because there you write your application part in Swedish in your case, so that they can see, yes, you actually do speak Swedish and can write in Swedish. So that's slightly different. But the supporting documents can be in any language, so you don't, any EU official language. Exactly.
Yes.
So there you don't have to go through the trouble.
All right. Back to motivational and lobbying. Do you address your motivation letter towards DG, or should you make it more general? Any recommendations regarding the motivation letter?
You don't have to specify it to one DG if you don't want to, because as part of your application, you put those top 3 choices. So they already know who you're kind of addressing it to automatically. But if you are very interested in one DG, don't hesitate to put it in there. You can justify in your motivation why you chose those 3. That is very common. So why did you make this choice, and just kind of show that you consciously made the effort to look at what, you know, at the topics that the DG works on, etc. So just be as specific as possible in the motivation letter. Don't say, oh, I choose klima and environment because I'm interested in climate issues. But say why. What is your specific experience? What have you done already in climate? What, I don't know, have you written some kind of publication on it? Or are you working in this field already? You know, be as specific as possible, just to show that you have relevant experience and not just an interest.
And also, I think you should try to present in what way you can contribute to the work of this DG, and also how you can be useful, and not only how the DG would be useful for you. And try to show that you know what DG or agency that you're applying for is working with, and not just some general information. Short question, is it possible to get Erasmus grant for this internship? I don't think so. No.
It's already paid.
Exactly, since you had like a form of salary or grant, so no. If you have been a student body or student organization, what would work as support document to show you have worked there? Like a student union representative, I guess, I don't know, some reference letter can be.
Exactly. I think I was active in societies back. I studied in the UK as well, so they have the student union system too. And I think your student union, the student union body, can be helpful. Depends on how official it is. So it's either the student union body, or if it's a charity, for example, you can get it from them as well, usually. Or if you have had a sort of contact person or an advisor as part of your experience, that person could just certify it with an official, let's say, signature from the organization.
Okay. And then quite longish but last question that we take today. After inclusion to the Blue Book, how was the process for you? Interviews, etc. Did you get to be interviewed, or did you just get offered?
Should I start maybe?
Yes, sure, Natalie, please.
So for me, I received a call from one of the DGs, and they interviewed me over the phone. They sort of just asked some general questions about my motivations and so on, just over the phone. And then I didn't hear back from them. So I know who they ended up picking, and she was much more qualified for that specific DG. So for me, I then received an email from DG Justice saying we would like to interview you. So that was a video interview, if I remember correctly, very much like this, because I was in Edinburgh at the time. So so that was how that was arranged, and then I got an answer sort of shortly after that I had been accepted. So there is normally a interview component to it, if I'm saying this, if I'm correct. Justyna can probably give a more accurate answer.
Yeah, it really depends on the directorate. So in my case, I was a latecomer trainee, so I didn't start on the 1st of October, but 2 weeks later. So literally 3 weeks, I think, before the traineeship started, I got a phone call from the deputy head of unit saying, "Oh, are you still interested?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure." And that's how it worked for me. So it was very informal, and it really varies. So some DGs take this very seriously because they have many candidates, and they usually do phone interviews. So just kind of expect a phone call randomly. They will not give you a time. They usually don't schedule them. They just call you up and just want to have a conversation with you. But don't be afraid if you don't get any phone calls, because at least 50%, I think, of units just choose their trainee. They pick them in our system that we have, and through us, or through the traineeship's office, you will then receive an offer. So not every unit does those interviews. They mostly rely on the written application that you have in the platform. And also be aware that if you do get a phone call, the unit itself cannot give you an offer. So even if they tell you on the phone, yes, we will pick you, that is in no way a guarantee. Because if, for example, you were their second choice and your first choice DG wants you and they don't call you, they will still get priority. And your second choice, even though they called you and said that they would select you, will lose you in that respect. So the official offer can only come from the traineeship's office. Anything they tell you on the phone is just preliminary. They can say, yes, we will put you as the first choice, but whether you actually get the offer is another thing. Just keep that in mind.
So that's why it's so important to prioritize and rank carefully when you choose those 3 DGs.
Exactly.
Yes.
And make sure that you have a phone number that they can put you on.
Yes. All right, it doesn't seem like we have more questions. I would like to thank you both very much, and also for all the participants who chose our webinar instead of going to the beach and enjoying vacation. Hopefully the application opens soon. If you have any more questions, you have my contact details, then I can forward any questions that I cannot answer to Justyna or Natalie. Make sure that you also read information about how to write a successful application on our website. Then there are surely a whole bunch of different Facebook groups with former and present trainees that would be more than happy to answer your questions. And I really hope that eventually you write a good application and succeed. So I wish you good luck. And once again, thank you very much.